Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and we got some great guests today on the program, and we want to start the program off with a kind of a special person to me personally, because I love airplanes. I, in fact, got into broadcasting by flying airplanes, and as part of my life, I really enjoy aviation. Well, our guest is Mike Maurer. He's with JARS, which is the aviation branch of the Wycliffe Bible Translators, and he uses aviation airports for evangelism. I think you'll find it be very interesting. Join me now as we talk to Mike. Well, today we're very honored to have with us a very special guest. Mike Maurer is with us today, and his story and the reason he's here and where he's going and where he's been from is quite fascinating, as he is part of the Wycliffe Bible Translators, and he also flies with JARS. And Mike, nice to have you in the studio.
Thank you, Perry. It's good to be here.
You're traveling through, right?
I am. I'm actually on a vacation trip this time with a couple of friends, kind of a dream trip. We all thought we could never do this. We left North Carolina and Georgia 2.5 weeks ago, and we've done some wilderness flying in Idaho and some flying here in Oregon and in Washington, and we're heading home after this interview.
Your bucket list flying trip, huh?
It is. It's been quite an experience.
But you've been involved with JARS and Wycliffe, clear back to '81?
That's right.
How'd that happen? What got you going?
Oh, it's a long story, but in a nutshell, I was always interested in learning to fly. I grew up around naval air stations. My dad was an aircraft mechanic in the Navy. Saw airplanes all the time. When I got out of high school, I started taking flying lessons just because it's something I wanted to do. Shortly after I started taking lessons, a missionary pilot came through a church that I'd started attending. I never knew there was a such thing as missionary aviation. And he came through and spoke and shared some of his stories. And I thought, I didn't know you could do that. I could do that. Why don't I do that? Yeah. And so after that I geared all of my aviation training, both pilot and mechanic training, towards going into missions. And in 1981 I had completed the minimum requirements for JARS and applied, and became a member of Wycliffe Bible Translators, assigned to JARS to use my aviation skills. Wow,
so you've been all over the world.
Well, not all over the world. I was assigned to the Philippines.
Really?
For 20 years. We lived in that country for about 15 and a half. My family went with us in support of Bible translation. And so most of my travel is to the Philippines. I've been to a lot of airports. I've been to the airport in Seoul and a couple of Japanese airports in Hong Kong and Taipei, but I just saw the airports.
Well, yeah. But you know, tell us about JARS, because it's been an incredible aviation ministry that's been around a long time and continues to go to all parts of the world.
The founder of Wycliffe Bible Translators, Cameron Townsend, early in the organization's history, saw a need for providing transportation support for the missionaries that he was sending out to do Bible translation. This we're talking about in the 1930s.
Wow.
And then World War II came along, and he saw his vision come to fruition in 1948 with the establishment of the Jungle Aviation and Radio Service to provide transportation and communication support for Bible translators in the Amazon jungles of South America. So that's how the organization started in 1948. Over the years, we've grown to provide many other resources in support of Bible translation. Actually, today, aviation is one of our smaller resources that we provide. IT is the biggest to provide for the the IT needs in Bible translation. You know, so many other things that JARS helps provide resources.
Just on that alone, Mike, I know that Wycliffe, I've heard some figures that reaching the entire world in all of the language is now in sight.
It is in sight. Today, the numbers of languages needing Bible translation is less than the numbers that either have a Bible, a New Testament, or in progress. Where before we couldn't say that. We've seen the acceleration of Bible translation in the past 10 years has just been explosive to see the work of Bible translation and what God is doing to open doors, and groups partnering together and working together to bring His Word to people around the world that don't have it. There's almost 7,000 languages spoken in the world. And when I joined the organization, probably 4,000 of them still had need of Bible translation.
Wow.
That didn't mean that the other 3,000 all had a full Bible, but at least they had something going. Wow. And today that number is down below 2,000 for the first time.
Yeah,
in
and
history.
with you know, inventions being what they are, and the ITH being what it is, and I understand they can take voice translate. I mean, this can accelerate real fast, can it?
It can, and the resources that JARS helps provide to the Bible translation movement are a big part of that. Another thing is just the change in how we do Bible translation, the working with national churches and other organizations. Just a great partnership is growing to see that task completed. Wycliffe has a Vision 2025. Was established in 1999, so they were looking 25 years ahead, and the vision was that by the year 2025 we'll see a Bible translation project begun in every language of the world that needs one. Not necessarily finished, but begun, and that seemed like an impossible task in 1999. We were looking at over 3,500 languages.
Wow.
And today, with the acceleration of Bible translation and what we're seeing, we say, you know, some of us said, well, we might make 2035 or 2050. It's looking like that 2025 is a goal that is very achievable.
Yeah.
And the vision that the Lord has given, and
it's possible the Lord gave you the right number at the right time.
That is right. That is right. That was adopted at an international conference, and
that's wonderful.
The delegates there met for hours in prayer, and that's what they came up with.
Boy,
and
this is exciting.
It's an exciting time.
Now, you and your wife do a mission at the airport program.
Yes, I'm assigned now at the JARS headquarters in North Carolina. My primary ministry is in public relations. I still get to fly, but I'm ahead of the missions at the airport program. It's an educational public relations outreach of JARS, kind of like a traveling missions conference that allows us to share the story of Bible translation and the needs, and challenge people to become involved with us, to pray for us, to give as they can with their resources, or to come join us as volunteers or career missionaries, wherever they might fit. And that's in all aspects of life. You know, you could be a school teacher, an accountant, an aircraft mechanic, or a pilot, or a doctor, a nurse, you know, just so many areas. Anything that's done here in the U.S., even broadcasting, can be used in Bible translation.
So how do people just get a hold of Wycliffe and go from there?
Well, there's two ways. One is through the Wycliffe website. That's wycliffe.org, W-Y-C-L-I-F-F-E, wycliffe.org. The other is through the JARS website. We're a family of organizations, so we're a part of that. And that's just JAARS.org, the JARS website. You can go to that, learn more about the organizations, learn about how you could be involved, and contact us. There's ways to contact us.
Well, I just think, you know, you need to pray about that, because that 2025 now is in sight.
That's right.
You could be a part of an incredible time in world history, and quite frankly, the history of Christianity. And this organization has been around for a long, long time and doing a great work. You know, Mike, back to aviation for a moment. Okay. Kind of our little love together there. Yes. You have, JARS has made a shift to turbine, right?
That's right. Over the years of JARS aviation, there have been a wide variety of aircraft have been used. Some we used what we could get. We started, JARS started with an old Grumman duck. Yeah, people have to Google that to find out what a Grumman duck is. But and just a wide variety of aircraft. But our primary workhorses have been Cessna 206s and Helio Couriers, airplanes that are good in the bush, but they're piston engine airplanes. They use aviation gasoline, and in many parts of the world today it's very difficult or very, very expensive to get aviation gasoline. So we have begun a transition of our fleet to a turbine fleet that uses jet fuel. Every country has airline service, so they have jet fuel available. It's usually cheaper, it's more available, and so we've adopted two aircraft that we're using primarily. The Quest Kodiak, built over in Sandpoint, Idaho.
Oh, I love that airplane. I've never been in one. I want to fly one.
That's right, and that's replacing the Cessna 206s, and the Pilatus Porter, or PC-6, is replacing, built in Switzerland, is replacing our Helio Couriers. So we're going to that turbine fleet. Our pilots, especially the younger guys, you know, they're coming. Some of them are coming with turbine experience. We never used turbines before because they were so expensive to buy. And now in an era where we're being forced to go to them, the Lord is providing the resources to purchase those aircraft.
Well, they are very efficient.
Yes.
And of course, the fuel thing is a huge deal.
Yes.
But the performance that you're getting out of these, and I'm not too much familiar with the Plata 6, but the Kodiak, everything I read, and I've been on their site and I watch their videos and everything, I just go, this is the ultimate SUV with wings.
Well, that was an airplane that was developed with missions in mind.
Right, that was their heart, wasn't it?
The organizers who started that company came to us and other mission organizations and said, what do you need in the next generation of mission aircraft? So we all gave them our wish list.
Yeah.
We got a lot of our wishes. We didn't get everything, but it was designed with missions in mind, and we appreciate that. The company has a heart for missions.
How big is your fleet now?
In the world of JARS, 24 aircraft. We have 4 Quest Kodiaks and 4 PC-6s, and then other aircraft as well.
Well, I just want to encourage you, if you've never thought about this, you may want to think about it and pray about it, and take a look at jars.org, or wycliffe.org, that's WYCLIFFE.org, and no matter where you are in life's journey, take a look, see what God's doing there, and see if you could want to become a part of it, and the least of which, visit those websites and support them if you so feel led, because what they do is strictly on a voluntary basis and nonprofit. I think talking to Mike, talking to me, we define that word, don't we? Nonprofit.
Yes. Nonprofit. That's right.
And anyway, and just in a closing thought, one of the most serving aircraft that you had is now homed here in Medford. Millie. One of our aircraft that was in Peru for 27 years. Wow. Has been purchased by a friend here in Medford. Yeah. It's based in Medford, and we're hoping eventually to get some missions at the airport programs here in the Northwest, and using that airplane on static display to let people come out and learn some of its history. And learn how it's been used. Okay, wonderful. Stories about how it's been used. Well, Mike, safe travels, my friend. Enjoy your journey home. It's going to be a little warm as you go south. That's right. But stay high and and enjoy yourself. And let's stay in touch. We'll do that. Thanks for coming in. You're welcome. Thank you. We'll be right back. Okay. Well, exciting, and that aircraft is now, Millie, is home based here in Medford, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to have that static display so you can go out and see Millie firsthand. Well, coming up next, what about fake IDs, especially driver's license, and how that works with aliens and immigration and all those issues? Well, our next guest is going to help us get a handle on that. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Well, I think we're all concerned about identity and fake ID and how it could be used to benefit a lot of people, and is there any effort to crack down on some of this? Our guest this morning is Brian Zimmer. He's the president of the Coalition for a Secure Driver's License, and he has served as a policy advisor and investigator for the Committee on the Judiciary, U.S. House of Representatives, and he deals with this topic. And Brian, nice to have you with us today.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you just fine. You're looking good, too.
Well, I'm sorry I couldn't provide you with Skype or any of the others this morning, but we have some construction going in our office, and it wasn't possible to arrange that. But delighted to speak with you this morning. Yeah, likewise, and we'll get your pretty face in the future. But this is a fascinating topic, and it seems like that this argument is way overdue. How bad is this issue? Well, we were on the right track for a few years after 9/11. Congress and the 9/11 Commission were highly aware of the problem of not only counterfeit IDs, but people getting driver's licenses and IDs who really weren't eligible for them, in addition to which the need to distinguish between people who are legally here as guests, the people who are citizens, and people who are not here legally. So those are all related issues. The 9/11 terrorists entered legally, but most of them had lost their status. Some actually were losing their status in the days around 9/11 as in terms of their legal residence in the United States. So in the United States, we have no national identity card. We have a passport, which is issued for international travel purposes on a voluntary basis. That is, we don't get one automatically. We have to apply for it. We have to renew it. It's kind of a surrogate national ID, except only about 10% of Americans actually have a passport. So our internal passport, our national identity equivalent, and it's not a national identity card, are the state-issued driver's licenses and state-issued IDs.
Wow.
So that's really what, when we travel to another state, if there's some reason for us to present identification away from our home, we present a driver's license, and people accept that
right.
With no question.
Well, you know, this opens up such a huge topic because not only are we concerned about terrorists, we're concerned about those getting into the system for assistance from state government and elsewhere.
Correct. A lot of fraud. There's huge levels of tax fraud associated with counterfeit driver's licenses and with validly issued driver's licenses where insufficient attention has been paid by the Department of Motor Vehicles, the Department of Licensing, to confirming the identity of the person across the counter from them.
What about voting?
Well, that's a related issue. I think, honestly, my work with voting fraud indicates there's probably more absentee manipulation and issues than there are actual imposter fraud in most states. There are definitely proven cases of imposter fraud in Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. I don't know of any, Washington State, which tends to ignore it. I don't know of any cases like that in Oregon. I mean, I think it's highly localized. Most voter fraud organized locally. It's pretty complicated to have the trouble of usually what people will use if they're fraudulently voting. Imposter cases in Missouri, for example, they had little cards that had their names, but they didn't have any pictures on it. Because as soon as you do that, you're not only engaged in voter fraud, you're engaged in identity fraud. If you get caught, pretty risky.
You know, Brian,
the biggest example of the instance was in the 2000 election, where about 80,000 people were proven after the election to have voted in both New York and New York and Florida, and that was actually determined by them having driver's licenses in both states as well. But since then, as a result of 9/11, and in the case of Florida, election reforms, you can't do that anymore with Florida and New York. That is, only by fraud can you have a driver's license in both states.
Now,
so there have been some reforms since 9/11 that have been desirable. And even in Oregon, there were some major reforms initiated by the governor and the legislature in 2007 when lawful presence was put in, which, among other things, stopped the practice of providing driver's licenses and IDs to illegal aliens.
Wow.
And as you know, that legislature reversed itself and is now involved in a new adventure.
Right. Brian, is it true that some of the Al-Qaeda training manuals deal with this subject and how to obtain one?
Yeah, well, there's only one central Al-Qaeda training manual. It's reproduced in many languages. But there's a whole chapter devoted toward the front of the manual, devoted to disguising your identity and disguising also whether you are a devout Muslim or not. The manual actually goes further than talking about passports and driver's license. It also talks about appearing as though you are not a devout believer. For example, the 9/11 terrorists made a point of going to Las Vegas, partying, etc. They thought that would throw people off the track if they were being followed.
Wow.
So they probably had a good time too, watching strippers in Vegas and other places. But it's part of Al-Qaeda's MO to appear to be sort of a secular Muslim if you're in another country planning, or maybe not even in another country, if you're planning wicked things.
Is there any defined program, Brian, to go after terrorists from obtaining a counterfeit driver's license?
There is. And it is a very tiny part of the Department of Homeland Security, and it was authorized after Congress passed the Real ID Act of 2005, where one of the titles requires the Department of Homeland Security to establish national standards and to so the states have a set of rules, rather complicated rules, that require a lot more security around the process of driver's license issuance. So that the regulations for that came out in 2008, and my organization keeps careful tabs on which states actually comply with it, and the current count is 20 states, and Oregon is far from being among them.
Wow.
So you're one of the laggard states in terms of your local consumption.
You know, we all sense this problem in our culture, but it just seems like it's not being dealt with. It just seems like it's just there. We all know it's there, but if it is so significant, and this is a major loophole in fighting terror, why we can't close this door?
Well, let's revisit terrorism. Let's make sure that your public understands that terrorism is a very subtle business. It's not obvious. It's not like people marching in the streets with placards. It's not like Hollywood contrives it with their movies where guys jump out of helicopters and have armored trucks with mobs of folks in it, like some of the recent movies. And I think a good example of this is the Oregon case. There's two Oregon cases. One of them was a foreign student who attempted to blow up a parade a few years ago in Portland. You probably remember that. Mm-hmm. And then, but this slips out of people's mind. It's a minor page note, especially if the terrorist was intercepted. The would-be terrorist was intercepted before actually killing anyone. So then it just becomes like a bar fight. If you read it in the newspaper, it doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
But if the terrorist succeeds, like the two in Boston, people are killed, including children and women who are circumstantial victims. And in Boston, I think roughly 30 people had amputated limbs. Mm-hmm. Most of their lives are ruined. Hundreds more were wounded or injured by flying debris or the actual bombs they flew. That Boston Marathon was not long ago. Mm-hmm. Now, in those cases, in those individuals, both those people were legal immigrants, but had successfully appeared to assimilate. And even though they came from a family associated with terrorism in Chechnya, which has now been revealed, and probably the immigration officials knew that, there was no kind of follow-through by the immigration office with Massachusetts, nor would Massachusetts even have the sort of facility to do that. I just read recently that Oregon state legislatures decided they wouldn't fund your Office of Homeland Security that focuses on the issue of terrorism in Oregon, and they were seeking federal grant to do it.
Yeah, believe me,
like
we're
the
well
attitude
aware
of
of
your
that.
citizens, even though just this spring, the feds charged a man named Khan, who runs a store in Portland, with being a major, if not the major, conspirator behind the 2009 suicide bomb attack in Pakistan's intelligence service in Lahore, Pakistan. Killed about 30 people, injured 300 more. He's an upstanding citizen of Portland, I guess.
Whoa. Well,
yeah, I recommend you read it. It was the press release by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Portland says Oregon resident charged with conspiring to provide material support essentially to the Taliban, Al-Qaeda folks there. So there may be more folks around in Oregon than you know, and you just think they're somebody nice that you can buy some Middle Eastern food from.
Yeah. Brian, so where are you going with this fight, and how can people get involved?
Well, I look at it as a long-term project more than a fight. I wish there was enough Americans were that connected. I think the main thing that we are trying to emphasize is that we seem to, and I'll give you an analogy, we keep having disastrous storms, we keep having special commissions, and yet nobody really gets ready for the next one, not even Louisiana or, in this case, New Jersey. They're busy feeling sorry for the people that were injured. They're not really taking the proactive steps or raising bonds to build seawalls to stop the next Sandy in New Jersey or New York. It's pathetic. And we're the same way with terrorism, which is, we had that was a long time ago. We feel sorry for all the policemen. What my organization tries to do is to say, there's some fairly low-cost things we can do that really make it difficult for this to happen again. It's not like rising seawaters. We don't have to build large walls. We just have to keep attention to the fact that in this country, the driver's license is an extremely important part of law enforcement and security, including risk from foreign terrorists.
Wow.
That means that states, right now, Oregon spends about a buck or less to make their driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
They spent about $3 a driver's license instead of $1 a driver's license to make the darn thing. It would be pretty much counterfeit proof. You would not see a counterfeit Oregon driver's license that was in any way resembling the real one.
I got to scoot. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. Let's stay in touch, and when we can, we'll Skype you back in. But this is fascinating, and I'm sorry that Oregon is just not on top of this, and I'm sure it'll be some issues coming up during this election cycle where this is going to be talked about. Thank you, my friend, and thank you for your work.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, we are all watching with great concern what's happening in Syria, and I think our own government's kind of embroiled in something that just, quite frankly, this administration doesn't know how to handle it. But let's get a really good perspective on this issue and that and some other things going on. I am really quite excited to have back with us today our good friend Avi Lipkin. He's an author, a speaker, co-founder of the Israel Today magazine. He served 30 years in the Israeli Defense Forces, and we've had him on the show quite a few times, and he's even been in our area and lectured, and we welcome him back. Hi, Avi. How you doing, my friend? Do we have...
Great to be on your show again, and I might be back in your neck of the woods in October, November.
Oh, good. Well, we look forward to you, and we'll have you in the studio when that happens.
That would be great.
Okay. Hey, listen, give us your take on this whole Syria mess and how things and how we're handling it. Okay, I tell you what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to reconnect with him. I apologize for that, and we got a little bit of a Skype issue. We'll have our tech crew redo that. I do want to talk to him about Syria. Syria is obviously one of those areas now that has received unbelievable attention. And as you know, in my opinion, it appears that the current administration has really dropped the ball in managing. In fact, the question has to be asked, what is our foreign policy these days? I don't know if anybody can define it. And it's really been sad to watch. But also, Syria is an incredible mess. You got so many factions working against themselves. And yes, it is absolutely horrific that innocent children and women and men, citizens, were gassed there in August. The question is, who did it? We know that Syria has these kind of weapons. We know that the rebels have their hands on some of those kind of weapons. And all along, the accusation has been that Assad gassed his own people. We can't prove that. We know that gas was used. But it's created a scenario that there's just no wins. If the United States gets involved in this, it's no win. But aside from all the criticism, everything that's going on, it is such a mess that it's hard for us to really figure out what is the right thing to do. However, the polls are very significant. The last one I saw was just yesterday that still 72% of Americans feel that we should not be involved in Syria. And what's hard about this, especially as Christians, we have a hard time not being able to help the innocent, not being able to go into a country and help the innocent. And that clearly has been the case. But getting in there, if you help one side, you're emboldening another side. And in the end, we are emboldening people who hate the United States. So it's a really confused war. So I think we have reconnected now with Avi. We had to go to the phone because our Skype situation this morning hasn't been cooperative. So Avi, we have you on the phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for that. Hopefully we can get that worked out in the future. Hey, tell me from your perspective, Avi, how are you viewing the Syrian mess?
Okay, well, I was beginning to explain this before the break, beyond our control. There are 4 levels to the Syrian tragedy. Of course, you have humanitarian tragedy, and that's something that all Americans can relate to, whether it's in favor of the Shiites or in favor of the Sunnis or in favor of the Christians who are being annihilated by both sides. But there are 3 other sides to the conflict that people are not watching. The first thing is, and you alluded to this before you got me onto the air, and that is that there are people who hate America. And let me explain this. The war in Syria is part, really, of a continuing war of 1,400 years. It's kind of like the Catholic-Protestant wars of Reformation, but 1,000 times worse. And the Sunnis and the Shiites, they both hate America. They're both Muslim, and they both believe that Islam is going to conquer the world. The only question is, do they believe that their Islam is the one that's going to do the conquering? Meanwhile, they're self-destructive and killing each other. So this is 1,400 years of history. Second level that I wanted to talk about is that Israel is facing a tremendous quandary here regarding the Iranian nuclear threat. The Iranian nuclear threat is referred to in my book, my 3rd book, out of 6, Islamic Threat Updates Almanac in 2003. In other words, the Iranian nuclear project is nothing new, but it is rapidly approaching production capabilities. And the plan is not to produce 1 bomb. Their plan is to produce dozens, if not hundreds, of warheads. And the Iranians today are capable of hitting Saudi Arabia, which is an ally of the United States, all the Gulf states, Israel, Turkey, American military bases throughout Europe and Turkey. If this Iranian threat is not a threat to Israel alone. This is a threat to the human race. And we have a bunch of crazy leaders who happen to be Shiites, and they are allied with Bashar al-Assad, who's a Shiite. So the war takes on, and this whole conflict takes on another dimension. So you have the dimension of Syria alone, or Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. Then you have the dimension of Iran with the nuclear threat. And the third dimension is the possibility of a world war between Russia and the United States, because Russia, China back Iran, the U.S. and NATO, Europe back the Sunnis and the rebels in Syria. So this is something that could spiral out of control. You have to remember that America, for the last 10, 20, 30 years, ever since George Herbert Walker Bush left the White House, the American military has been cutting back and closing bases and radiating how shall I say, an impression of weakness. The Russians, the Chinese have been building their militaries, and they smell blood in the water. America is projecting weakness. So it may be that, America is still, God willing, is the strongest power on the earth. But the impression in China and Russia is that America has become a paper tiger. The military has been castrated. Therefore, World War III is a consideration for these people, which I think is a horrible thing. And we should forget that World War I started because one bullet killed Archduke Ferdinand, the Austrian prince in Serbia. And when the Austrians demanded the extradition of the Serb and declared war on Serbia, the Russians, allies of the Serbs, declared war on Austria. Therefore, the Germans declared war on Russia. Therefore, the English and the French declared war on Germany and Austria. And so this is a domino. And we're looking at the potential of many dominoes in the Middle East today.
All right, let me just go back a little bit on some of this stuff, Avi. Do you think if we were to go in, if we actually went in and did some kind of a military operation, what would that do?
Well, firstly, you have to understand something, in my opinion. I personally don't think for a moment that American troops should be on the Syrian soil.
Right.
What I'm saying, if indeed the President of the United States decides to launch Tomahawk missiles to hit very specific targets, there is a possibility that Bashar al-Assad would not retaliate against Israel. But on the other hand, you've got a crazy group called Hezbollah. You have a crazy group called the Iranian leadership. And Bashar al-Assad is allied with these people. He's not really in control of them. They're in control of him. And so if their approach is to declare war on Israel, then this will escalate to the next level, which is Iran-Israel. If Israel attacks Iran, then Russia may attack Israel. Because Iran is an ally of Russia, and Russia is going to stand with them. China is going to stand with them. So I don't think you will see American troops on the ground. I think that, for better or for worse, probably for worse, Al-Qaeda is going to defeat Bashar al-Assad. It's just a question of attrition, a question of time. And Bashar al-Assad can launch as many chemical weapons as he wants. But you have jihadi Al-Qaeda people pouring into Syria all the time. and eventually they will outnumber the Bashar army, and even with the Iranians helping them.
Well, as you well know, the relationship between at least this administration and Israel has not been anything but friendly. And what I did find interesting is that nowhere during this potential conflict did we see any kind of dialogue between the United States and Israel as it relates to what the effect would be of an attack in Syria upon Israel.
Oh, no, I disagree with you, sir. The Israeli military is totally coordinated with the American military. I mean, you're not going to hear about it, and I'm not going to hear about it, but I'm just telling you, Israel marches in lockstep with the United States military.
Okay, so at what point would Israel then have to look past the Syrian strike and make sure that that Iran wouldn't strike in the shadow of that?
Well, like I said before, there is no way to know. You're dealing with irrational people.
Okay.
The Muslims, whether they're Sunnis or Shiites, they're irrational. And because they're irrational, you have to learn to expect the unexpected. So Israel, and I believe the United States in coordination with Israel, are ready for any crazy behavior that might take place. And like I said before, if Bashar al-Assad launches chemical weapons and kills 1,300 or 1,400 people, I mean, that's a horrible thing.
All right, let me take...
when the nuclear bomb of Iran is flying, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people could die.
All right, let me take a break here, Avi. When we come back, I want to talk about Christian persecution in that area as well. We'll be back in just a few moments with our special guest, Avi Lipkin.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back with Avi Lipkin, and he's giving us an update on all kinds of things, and in particular at the moment here, what's happening in Syria. Avi, I do want to get to some other things, but I'm just curious. I know you track Christian persecution. What's it like in that region now?
Well, it was bad before, and it's worse now. Let me first give a very quick overview of Saddam Hussein and Bashar al-Assad. The two of them have a political party known as the Ba'ath, B-A-A-T-H. The Ba'ath is a socialist party. It's quasi-socialist, quasi-communist, quasi-Nazi. The important thing is that the Ba'ath Party of Iraq under Saddam Hussein and the Ba'ath Party of Syria under Bashar al-Assad are not Islamic parties. They are like communist parties or socialist parties. The reason I don't say communist is because they actually protected the Christians of Iraq. Saddam was a defender of the Christians. Saddam was and Bashar al-Assad is the defender of the Christians. Syria today is a country of 10% Alawites, which is Bashar al-Assad's group, 10% Christians, that's 20%, and then you've got certain Sunnis, and you've got a group called the Druze, and you've got a group called the Kurds, and these people are all minorities in Syria together. They make up about 50% of the population. The remaining 50% are Sunni Arabs who wish to annihilate not only the Christians and the Kurds and the Druze, but they also want to annihilate their fellow Sunnis who are traitors and infidels working with Bashar al-Assad. And so what's happening is wherever the Al-Qaeda win, wherever the Jabhat al-Nusra win, they annihilate the Christians wherever they can find them because they're part of the Bashar al-Assad regime.
Wow. The Vatican's gotten in on this a little bit. They're reporting 100,000 a year killed because of their faith. Are those numbers that big?
Well, let's look first at what Christians you have in the Middle East. Egypt has 10 million Coptic Christians out of a total population of 90. So it's 10 million Christians, 80 million Muslims. And a lot of them are being killed. I don't know numbers, but it's not good. And they're kidnapping Christian girls. It's not just the killing. It's the kidnapping of girls, forcing them to marry Muslim men, getting them impregnated. And if they try to escape to kill them, they kill their family too. That's the situation in Egypt. In Syria, you have 2 million Christians. Lebanon, you have like 2 million Christians. and Iraq have like 1 million. That's 5 million. They're surrounded by about, I would say, well, you know, Syria is 20 million people. 2 million are Christian and 2 million are Alawites. The rest are Sunnis, pretty much. And like I said before, it's very hard to pin on a figure, say 100,000. But what we do know is wherever the Jabhat al-Nusra go, wherever the Al-Qaeda goes, they will annihilate any Christians they find. And so it's actually quite ironic. I think I've spoken about this on your show. I'm working to form a Judeo-Christian political party in Israel. And because I'm doing that, I'm meeting with Arabic-speaking Christians as well. So many of them are Catholic, many of them are Greek, Orthodox, or Armenian, or other groups. And all of them say to me, why is it that Vladimir Putin is the hero of the Christians, and America Obama is the hero of the Sunni Muslims? And it's very hard for me to answer. I mean, it's not hard for me to answer. I know exactly why. Because it's about oil and money, and the Saudis have the oil and the money, and the Saudis are dictating what to do. But I do think that it is ironic that America used to be a Christian country. Today, America is standing with those who would wipe out the Christians in Europe, in the Middle East. 15 million Christians. It's a scary idea.
So what you're saying here is that the Obama administration's policy or philosophy favors the jihadists more than the Christian?
Absolutely correct. And favors the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And the ironic thing is, you know, Mubarak, you know, he was the great friend of Israel or America, but, you know, he kind of kept the lid on things for 30 years. And the first thing Obama said when the riots started in Egypt, you know, that he should quit, that Mubarak should quit. And he supported the Muslim Brotherhood from day one. And, you know, the Egyptians, after, you know, 12 months of Muslim Brotherhood rule, it's like having little children ruling the country. They completely destroyed Egypt. And so the military, which has its brain screwed on right, deposed, you know, Morsi, and yet President Obama keeps supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. What's going on here?
What was your thoughts on Putin's op-ed piece in the New York Times day before yesterday? And even at the end of that op-ed, he quotes his faith, supposedly, saying we're all equal, but we're different. I mean, I believe he's a Russian Orthodox, but are you telling me that he is now going to end up being the hero of the believers in that region?
Correct. Let me say another thing. As a student of history, especially American history, I don't know if you remember, sir, there was a Frenchman by the name of Alexis de Tocqueville in 1840, and he wrote a book called Democracy in America. And he said in 1840 that America was a Christian country and that America would be the greatest country on earth because the pulpits are on fire for the Lord, meaning Christian, and that the American people are good people. Now, Americans are still good people, but today America is not a Christian country anymore. On the contrary, if you're a Christian, the American government says you're a terrorist. If you're a Bible fundamentalist believer like you and I are, we're mentally insane. And so this country is steering away from Christianity, steering away from Judaism and Christianity, steering away from the Bible, steering away from God, steering away from Jesus Christ. If you are part of that, then you are part of the downfall of the United States of America.
Yeah,
so Alexis de Tocqueville, just one more sentence. Alexis de Tocqueville saying what made America great was its Christianity. Today Christianity has fallen in America. The Russians, you know, Vladimir Putin said that, you know, what made Russia great is Christianity. So he's talking like Alexis de Tocqueville in 1840.
I'm just going to let that stand. I would hope it sinks in deeply because at the end of the day, we people of faith are going to pay a terrible price. And I believe it's even scriptural because we're the ones that have to repent and get right with God and turn this thing around. Hey, let me jump over to the Million Muslim March that was overrun by 2 million motorcyclists. What's your take?
Well, you know what? I love these motorcyclists. I love America. I love the Christians. And actually, I heard that only 200 Muslims showed up.
Wow. That was on.
I don't know how many, but I heard that, I don't know if it was 2 million motorcyclists, but I did hear there were only 200 Muslims. They chickened out. And, you know, I have to tell you something. You know, I speak in churches all over the United States and all over the world, as you know. And there was a very funny story. A few months ago, I was in Oklahoma City, and I was in a Baptist church, and the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, issued a protest that the pastor should not have me speak. I have a 3-year jail sentence in Switzerland for bad-mouthing Islam, and saying that Allah is the devil and Islam is not a religion but a criminal psychosis, which I still say today, and that they're going to demonstrate outside the church. let me tell you, the church was packed out completely when they heard the Muslims were coming. No Muslims showed up. Channel 4 and Channel 5 TV in Oklahoma City showed up. I got a wonderful offering. And I said to the pastor after I spoke, make sure every time I'm coming to church to announce to the Council on American Islamic Relations that Avi Lipkin is coming to town so that they can protest and increase the attendance at the church.
Well, there you go. Can you recap what you think the relationship is between the United States and Israel is as of today?
Okay, firstly, let me say one thing. The American relations with Israel, people to people, are fantastic. I still do believe that two-thirds of the American people are Christians of all denominations. What I think is that you have a hijacking of the Judeo-Christian American agenda by this minority in the media and in government. But the people themselves, on a people-to-people basis, love Israel. Israel is the apple of God's eye, and if you're a Christian, you cannot go against the apple of God's eye, especially if you're grafted into the Jews. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're Christian and you believe in the New Testament, Romans 9-11 says that Christians are grafted into the Jews. I mean, it's no-brainer. So the American people, I believe two-thirds of them do love Israel. You look at the polls, and consistently the people are with Israel. The American military is with Israel. The American military marches in lockstep with the Israeli military, or shall I say vice versa. The only problem is and by the way, the legislature, the Senate and the House of Representatives are overwhelmingly in favor of Israel. Our only problem, or shall I say our only two problems, are the executive, which is the president, the White House, and the other is the State Department, which has always been Arabist.
Well, yeah, I think I think you're absolutely right with that description. The question is, does Netanyahu and the Israelis know that this is an administration issue and conflict more than it is an American issue and conflict?
You know what? Let me tell you a little story. I don't know if we did this on your last show or the show before, but my wife, Rachel, who is from Egypt and speaks Arabic as her mother tongue.
I got about a minute.
Picked up a broadcast. Huh?
I got about a minute, so go for it.
Where she picked up an Egyptian TV broadcast where the Egyptian foreign minister was saying that Obama swore to him during his visit in 2009 that Obama was a Muslim, his father is a Muslim, his stepfather is a Muslim, he was raised in a mosque and a madrasa until age 11, which makes him a Muslim, and he swore that he would destroy Israel when the American economy was back on track and Obamacare was completed. And so the Prime Minister's office called my wife and spoke to her. So, the Prime Minister's office is close.
Wow. Well, Avi, thank you. We look forward to getting some of these technical things worked out. We'll get you back on Skype, but you're going to be here in about a month or so, and we look forward to having you live in the studio with us, my friend. Thank you so much for your diligence and staying on top of this stuff. You are a true statesman, and we look forward to having you in the studio.
God bless you, and God save America.
Amen to that one. Thank you so much. All right, Avi Lipkin with us today, and we'll let you know what his speaking arrangements are when he comes into the area, so that you may want to attend to one of his lectures. All right, have a great time. Over the weekend. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim, and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.